Howdy all you totally tubular gamers, we're back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Doom: The Dark Ages. Now before we begin, I do want to give a huge shout out, a big thank you to Bethesda for hooking me up with a review code a whole week early before the game released. That's an absolute highlight of my entire YouTube career, so that was really cool. Since I got the code, I've been playing this game non-stop and I have actually finished it. And so with that, I'm sure the question on everybody's mind is, how is it? Well, I think Doom: The Dark Ages is totally tubular. So yeah, I guess the video can just end right here. So if you made it to this part of the video, you can comment spicy nuggets, you get a heart from me. Thank you so much.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
Okay, the video is not going to end right there. I guess I gotta explain myself. So this is why Doom: The Dark Ages is totally tubular. Now, when you look at Doom as a series, what you have is a masterclass of first-person shooters. Some of the very best FPS games are in this franchise, with the last two core Doom games, 2016 and Eternal, being some fantastic games. So the pressure was absolutely on for Doom: The Dark Ages. Were they going to do more of the same? Were they going to try something completely new and different? Were they going to reinvent the franchise? It's kind of all of those together, and you'll see why soon enough. Pre-release, I didn't really think much of the Dark Ages. I saw that announcement trailer last year, went, that looks pretty cool, and that's about all I saw. I didn't want to spoil myself on anything, so I didn't see any other trailers. So with that, I will say there will be minor visual spoilers here, but I will not be spoiling some of the game's cooler, more badass moments, and I won't be going in depth when it comes to the story. I'll keep things pretty vague and general here. And speaking of, let's talk about the story and setting of this game. So Doom: The Dark Ages is actually a prequel to Doom 2016, but it still sees you as the one and only Doomslayer doing what he does best, killing demons. The setting is pretty interesting. It's like this techno medieval setting that I've really never seen before. There's plenty of medieval stuff here. There's castles and weapons from the medieval era, but then there's also this futuristic influence, like they still very much have guns, electricity, energy shields, etc. And it creates just this really unique setting that I feel only something like Doom could pull off. So what is the actual plot to this game though? The game essentially is about the Doomslayer essentially protecting this entire kingdom from the forces of hell. This time hell is really mad. They've actually got a leader, and that leader is going to try to take down this entire kingdom. And the Doomslayer is pretty much all that stands in the way from them doing so. There is quite a bit more to this story than that. There's actual characters, some real plot progression, a few of the characters go through arcs, and you even get to learn a bit more about the Doomslayer's origins. There's also a fair amount of cutscenes, more than any other Doom game, and while I know that there are plenty of people who do not care if Doom has a story or not, I am not one of those people. I've enjoyed the stories in the last few Doom games, and I quite enjoyed the story in this game as well. I was actually kind of surprised with how much I liked the story. I was intrigued at the beginning, I was curious about who these other characters are and why I should care about them, but thanks to a combination of decent world building, good writing, and some really badass moments, you come to actually care about this story and you really want to see the Doomslayer succeed, possibly more than any other Doom game. They actually let the Doomslayer go through a few mini arcs of his own, and I actually thought that was really cool. I think the plot's good and is going to be one of the more underrated aspects of this game. But don't worry, despite all of that, you still very much are the Doomslayer. The game makes you feel like an absolute badass. It really is the ideal power fantasy. Not only in cutscenes do they treat this guy like a god, but the game is just littered with moments where the Slayer acts like an absolute Chad, and all I can say is, hell yeah. The Slayer, and really the game in general, just has a certain attitude about it that is very similar to the two prior games, and all I can say is, keep it coming. This is great. But you know, it's one thing to nail the character of the Doomslayer, it's another to actually feel like the Doomslayer in gameplay. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the combat of Doom: The Dark Ages. So going into this, I had heard that the combat was going to be quite different from 2016 and Eternal, but I didn't realize just how different the combat actually was until I really got into the thick of things. So Doom 2016 was a fast, modern-day interpretation of Doom. It was a modern boomer shooter, one of the first of its kind, and then Doom Eternal cranked things up to 11 and was all about being fast, frenetic, chaotic, and really all over the place. Doom the Dark Ages takes elements from both of those games, but it also infuses it with a bunch of new ideas and essentially creates a brand new, never before seen combat loop, not only for Doom, but first-person shooters in general. The Slayer feels heavier and more grounded when compared to the two prior games. Eternal saw you jumping and flying all over the place, you were dashing left and right, and if you stopped moving at all, you were pretty much dead in the water. The Dark Ages does not feel like that. When it comes to the game speed, it's more in line with 2016. Like, it's still a very fast first-person shooter, but it isn't white knuckle and frantic like Eternal. And one of the reasons that the game is slower is due to the Slayer's lack of mobility. You can't dash around, you can't double jump, no. You can sprint, you can jump, and you can do a high jump. That's it when it comes to the movement. The Slayer feels much more like a tank in this game, and it's for a few reasons. So let's start with the game changer that is the shield saw. From the moment you begin the game, you have this thing. It works as a shield and a chainsaw. And yes, it's as metal as it sounds. So because this thing is, a shield, you can actually hide behind it. You can block attacks. If you're getting shot at, you can put that shield up and actually hide behind it. About to get punched by a giant demon, throw that shield up, you'll be protected. And it's all with a single input as well. But you also can't just spam this shield. It actually does have a life bar. And if you take enough damage while blocking, you'll actually go on a cooldown and you won't be able to use the shield momentarily. And the game really makes you feel exposed when you don't have that shield out. You know why? Because this game has a parry mechanic. Of course it has a parry mechanic. Now at this point there have been hundreds, dozens of video games that feature parrying, but the way the Dark Ages does it feels a little different. Parrying works exactly how you think it would. When you're about to be attacked by something, you just throw that shield up and you'll parry it. The Slayer won't take any damage and the attack will fly back at whoever threw it out. And it doesn't matter if it's a projectile or a physical attack, you can send that shit right back at them. But here's the thing, you can't actually parry every single attack in this game. You can only parry green attacks. Most of the time when an enemy attacks you, it's with a green attack, but all of the enemies have moves that just straight up cannot be parried. You just have to block or dodge them. Now, something that I really like about the parrying is when you parry something in this game, the game goes into slow-mo for like half a second. And not only do you feel like a total badass, but it also gives a lot of feedback to the player like, yes, you succeeded, you did the parry, and the enemy took damage. It really does make you feel like an unstoppable tank, and you're gonna have to master this parry if you want to get anywhere in this game. I'm not gonna act like the timing is super strict, but it's not the most forgiving. At the very least, the game does give you more than enough time to get used to the parry and to really get good with it. They give you the tools for success. It's up to you to use them. I never thought that I would be parrying so many attacks in a first-person shooter, let alone a Doom game, but it really works. It feels like all of the attacks, really a lot of the combat is built around parrying. The game, simply put, wants you to fuck shit up with this parry, and there are more than enough opportunities to do so. But you gotta remember, the shield saw isn't just a shield, it's also a saw. You can throw this thing at pretty much any time you want, and it'll just tear shit up. If it's one of the weaker enemies, it will just slice them in half. But if it's a bigger enemy, it'll actually get stuck in them and will stun them for a few seconds. If the enemy has armor though, the shield will just bounce right off them. But what makes this thing even better is that you don't have to go get that shield back. The shield always comes back to you at the press of a button. Eventually, it'll always come back to you, but if you want to recall it immediately, yeah, you just press the same button that you used to throw it. It's incredibly intuitive, and it's actually really satisfying to throw the shield all over the place. I would have never guessed that the Dark Ages is the greatest Captain America game ever made, but here we are. The shield saw absolutely kicks ass, and it single-handedly turns the entire combat loop on its head. Something else that's different from the prior two Doom games is the way that executions and melee weapons work. You can't just spam the melee button on everything. It actually does have limited charges, and you'll have to essentially pick up ammo for it like it's any other weapon. And the reason they do this is because the melee attacks are way stronger in this game than the prior Doom games. They absolutely mess shit up. And when it comes to executions, the glory kills are gone. Now it's just really quick kills that give you a bunch of health. Whenever you kill pretty much anything in this game, you get health. And when you use melee weapons, ammo flies out like crazy. But what are you going to be using this ammo on? The guns. Let's finally talk about the guns of Doom the Dark Ages. So the game actually deviates a little from the usual Doom formula when it comes to the weapons. Of course, you start with the shotgun. Eventually you get the super shotgun. But then you get this weapon called the Impaler, and eventually an upgraded version of that, and it's actually pretty similar to the stake launcher from Painkiller, where it shoots out these heavy spikes that can impale enemies. There's even a bit of an arc to it. You get a plasma launcher, which is pretty similar to the 2 prior games. Eventually you get a double plasma launcher. This thing shoots out plasma at a pretty fast rate and can make energy shields explode. But then you get a new weapon, the Skull Crusher. Basically it's this gun that fires bone fragments. Yeah, that's about as metal as it gets. Not only does it look really cool, but it's a really fun gun to use, and eventually you get an upgraded version of that as well. Another weapon you get is essentially this ball and chain launcher. It shoots this heavy ass ball out and it always comes back to you. This is way better than you would think. It has a lot of impact and it's strong as shit. And then you do get a grenade launcher. Eventually it even becomes a rocket launcher, and that's in plenty of other FPS games, and it feels great here. You do get one other weapon, but I'm not going to spoil that one. I think the weapon selection of the Dark Ages is excellent. While there is essentially only 6 different weapons, they're all vastly different from each other, and I feel like just about every weapon is useful in some scenario. Every weapon has its use, but something they all have in common is they all feel incredible to use. From that initial shotgun all the way up to the rocket launcher, every weapon feels, sounds, and looks phenomenal. They're all incredibly responsive, they give a lot of feedback, they have a good kick to them, the sound effects are incredible. The sound design in general is great for these weapons, and the way the enemies react to these weapons is excellent. You're just blowing chunks of flesh off their bodies, you're shattering bones, you're turning these things into literal dust. You are just straight eviscerating these creatures, and it's gory. This is a violent game, and it's not afraid to show you that violence, but it makes the gunplay, really the combat in general, all the more satisfying. And speaking of enemies, let's briefly talk about the enemies. So this game is a pretty deep roster when it comes to the enemies. A bunch of the Doom classics show up. Your Hell Knights, your Imps, your Arachnotrons, even the Mancubus shows up here. They all have a fun little remix to them though, thanks to not only the pairing mechanic but the setting in general. But outside of that, there's actually a bunch of new enemies to this game, and they're all introduced to you in some pretty epic ways. Every enemy has a strategy to take out, and certain weapons are better for certain enemies. But I wouldn't say that some weapons are just totally useless against some of these enemies. It really depends on the situation, the environment, and of course the enemy itself. There's also boss fights in this game, but I promised Bethesda I wouldn't show any, and so I'll just say they're pretty good, especially towards the later half, and I found them to be quite enjoyable. Now the next thing that I want to bring up for the combat is the way that the ammo economy works. I have heard for years people talking about how in Doom Eternal or in Doom 2016 you're always running out of ammo. You need to do a melee attack, a chainsaw attack to get more ammo, and they don't like that. Well, Doom the Dark Ages gives you plenty of ammunition. It was very rare that I ever ran out of ammunition for any of my weapons. Any kind of melee attack gives you tons of ammo. There's ammo all over these maps, too much to be honest, and anytime you kill an enemy, it drops ammunition as well. You will not be running out of ammo for these weapons, especially if you're taking advantage of the shield saw or using the shield bash. Yeah, you can actually charge enemies and bash them with the shield as well. It'll go on a cooldown, but that's another option. What I'm trying to say here is, I think you're going to be just fine when it comes to ammo. So, if you couldn't tell by this point, the combat has some real legs to it. It actually has a good amount of depth, but what makes the Dark Ages combat so good is how intuitive all of it is. Everything has its own button, and it all flows incredibly well. The game also doesn't bombard you with information at the beginning. It slowly introduces all of these abilities and weapons to you at a pretty good rate. It did take me a few hours for the combat to really click, but once it did, oh, I was locked the fuck in and I was having a good ass time. The combat in Doom the Dark Ages is nothing short of outstanding. I cannot believe just how well everything comes together. From the parrying, the shield throwing, to the dozen or so weapons that you get, it is phenomenal. All of it comes together to create some of the most engaging combat of not only any first-person shooter, but any video game in general. While the game has a slower pace and your mobility might be a bit more limited compared to the 2 prior games, there's still a lot of depth and you still feel absolutely unstoppable in this game. The further you get in this game, the stronger and stronger the Slayer gets, and you will just be ripping and tearing like no other Doom. It's clear there was a lot of effort put into the combat to make it feel really different from the 2 prior games, and not only does it feel different, but it feels great. It's satisfying, visceral, violent, gory, raw, and most importantly, fun. Like, holy shit, is it a lot of fun. I could not get enough of the combat in this game. But for the first time ever, there's more than just on-foot combat. Doom the Dark Ages actually lets you pilot 2 different vehicles, and this gameplay is very different from just playing as the Slayer on foot. You actually get to pilot this huge mech. It's like 30 stories or something crazy, and this thing makes you feel like you're in a Godzilla movie. It reminds me of Pacific Rim, where you're running around punching these giant demons, smashing them to bits, and of course destroying homes, towns, loved ones, etc. You're just stomping all over the place, and you'll feel unstoppable while doing so. The gameplay while in the mech is quite a bit slower. You'll be throwing punches left and right, maybe a stomp here or there, and really you're just beating the shit out of these giant demons, and it feels pretty nice. You feel like this hulking monstrosity, eviscerating fools left and right. At a few points you even get a giant minigun and you can further destroy these giant demons. I like the sense of weight that these fights provide, and it adds some variety to the combat. And what's nice is if you don't enjoy the mech sections like whatsoever, you think they're boring or lame or whatever, it's okay. You probably spend under 30 minutes total throughout the entire game in the mech. It's just a few key moments, and I think it's fun. The other vehicle you get to pilot is the cybernetic dragon. Yeah, the Doomslayer's got a mount, and it's a badass one too. You can fly around pretty much wherever you want, and there's dual miniguns attached to this thing, so you'll be taking down ships left and right, some little ones and some big ones. While there's no parry, if you dodge an attack at the right moment, you will do some stronger attacks, and those attacks are actually required if you want to destroy anything with a shield, so yeah, you better get good at dodging. I think this combat is fine, but I won't lie, the dragon sections feel a little underdeveloped. I wish there was a bit more you could do with the dragon, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. Like the mech, you don't spend all that much time with the dragon throughout the game. I'd say maybe the 30 to 45 minute mark throughout the entire game. Yeah, like 95% of the game is on foot combat, but there are these vehicle sections, and I think they provide a nice amount of variety to the game overall. I'm sure there's going to be some people who don't care for these vehicle sections, but even at their very worst, they're nowhere near intrusive. At least they weren't to me. So let's change gears here for a little bit. Let's talk about the level design. So the level design and levels in general are a little different from the prior two Doom games. There's really two types of levels. There's the more linear, straightforward levels that are very similar to 2016 and Eternals. But then there's these new types of levels where you're dropped into these rather large environments and are usually given a few objectives and the freedom to go pretty much wherever you want at any time. These areas are rather open, and there's actually quite a lot to see in these areas, and I'll just be blunt about it. I think the level design is great in this game. I love the linear levels that are like the prior games. They flow really nice, they've got great pacing to them, but these new open areas are really cool as well. I had so much fun exploring these large worlds, really just doing these levels and objectives at my own pace and finding all of the secrets. This game has so many secrets to it. Obviously the two prior games did as well, but there are a lot of secrets in each one of these levels, and they really incentivize you to find these secrets. While of course there's plenty of like concept art thrown in there or little dolls you can find here and there. Usually you'll also get resources necessary for upgrading your weapons. Yeah, that's one thing I haven't brought up yet. You can upgrade all of your weapons, including the shield and your melee weapons, and make them even better than they already are. But to do so, you'll need to find gold, these rubies, and then this other type of gem that's pretty rare. But these upgrades are totally worth it. They make your weapons significantly better. And if you really want to upgrade your equipment, you're going to have to find these secrets. You won't have enough resources to really upgrade your weapons. If you're just going through the game, not looking for any secrets, you don't care about picking anything up, you'll be able to upgrade your weapons a few times. If you get a fair amount of the secrets, oh, you'll be able to upgrade like all of your weapons almost fully. And once I realized this, I really changed my entire playstyle. When I first started playing the game, I was like, I'm just going through these missions. If I find a few of the secrets, cool, whatever, I don't really care. But then I realized that I wasn't really upgrading my weapons all that much, and I said, you know, I'm gonna try to find like all of these secrets. And there was actually a few levels where I legit found every single secret, and not only was it satisfying to find all of the secrets and clear the map out, but I got a bunch of my weapons to the max level and they were strong as fuck. So yeah, finding secrets is important. Thankfully, the secrets aren't too cryptic or hidden. It's pretty obvious where a lot of them are, and if you do just even a basic amount of exploration, you'll be just fine. I was playing this game pre-release. I didn't have any guides or anything like that, and I had no trouble finding a majority of the secrets in this game, and one of the reasons is because the level design is so great. It's obvious where you're supposed to go next. The game does a great job of funneling you through these levels, but there's also plenty of exploration and nooks and crannies. It should also be worth mentioning that there's barely any platforming in this game. Like, there is some, but nowhere near as much as Eternals. Genuinely though, it's some of the best level design you'll find in any first-person shooter. I also do want to give a shout out to the interface and the map. I'm always impressed by the maps of the modern Doom games. Like, oh, it's so good. It's easy to read, it's intuitive, it's super obvious where you are, it's really nice. So many games mess this up, not Doom the Dark Ages. They nailed that shit. You know what else they nailed? The presentation. This is a great looking video game when it comes to any aspect. The environments are stunning. They are beautiful. The lighting is great. The animations are really solid. The character models have a lot of detail. The gore, like I already mentioned, is off the chain. The frame rate was rock steady. The presentation is just god tier. Like, no exaggeration, no hyperbole here. The presentation is excellent and the optimization was great. And at least in my experience, the game was exceptionally well optimized. I don't have like a crazy rig. I have a 4070 and a decent processor, and I was running this thing at max settings and I never once had the frame rate drop on me. Like, it really was smooth as butter, and I was pretty impressed with the optimization in general. I was really impressed with just how polished this game is in general. No crashes, basically no bugs or glitches, no clipping. It's incredibly polished, nothing but high marks across the board. And when it comes to the sound, same thing. Even though Mick Gordon is not doing the music, I think the music is still really great in this game. Is it as good as Eternals? No, but it is still really nice. At the end of the day, it's exactly what you need the music in a Doom game to be, where it's a bit adaptive, and when the fighting starts, the music kicks off and it starts going crazy. It really hypes you up, it keeps you energized, and sometimes it's really freaking catchy. I like a lot of the music in Doom the Dark Ages, and I suspect that a lot of other people will as well. Even without Mick, we got some pretty good tunes here. As for the weapons, I already spoke on them earlier, but they all sound absolutely incredible. Nothing but phenomenal stuff. The voice acting, it's actually pretty decent here as well. There's more of it than I honestly thought there was going to be, but I'm alright with it. Like I said, the presentation in general really is S tier in the Dark Ages. But alright, I can see the comment already. You've been glazing this game for 20 minutes, you've been gassing it up nonstop. Is there anything you don't like about the game? Yes, I do have a few small minor complaints, nitpicks if you will, about the game that I would like to go over. It's not a perfect game, a perfect video game does not exist. My first nitpick is that it's a little slow to change weapon, and what I specifically mean is when you select a weapon, it takes a second for the Slayer to pull the weapon out and start firing from it. I feel like this could have been just a little faster, but hey, maybe that's just me. The next thing I want to bring up is that the game does have a bit of a learning curve to it. Like I mentioned earlier, it took me a few hours for the combat to really come together. And in those first few hours I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I'm having as much fun with this as I did with 2016 and Eternal, but by the end of the game, oh yeah, I was having just as much, if not more fun with this game than the prior two games. Just know that at first, you aren't exactly going to be a well-oiled machine when it comes to the combat and feel of this game. My next nitpick is something that I brought up a few minutes ago. The dragon sections feel a little underbaked. Like, the dragon is really cool. I wish there was more we could do with this thing than just shoot ships and have cool looking landings. I wish we had some more dogfights. I think that would have been really cool. And then the last issue I want to bring up is something that I could probably say about almost every Doom game, and that is that some weapons are just way more useful and better than others. For instance, why on earth would I ever want to go back to the single shotgun when I've got the double barrel? Why would I want to go back to the single plasma launcher when I can have two of them at the same time? Why would I ever want to go back to the shittier Skull Crusher? Even with the upgrades, I just don't think there's a lot of incentive to going back to the prior version of these weapons. You can switch at any time, but the moment I got the new version, I never went back. And then the Impaler, man, I just don't know about this weapon. I tried to use it so many times, but I just didn't think it was all that good. Especially when compared to the other weapons. It's not all that strong, they want you to get headshots, and it has a really slow fire rate. I prefer legit any of the other weapons in this game, especially the ball and chain. That thing is just strong as fuck. Sometimes to the point where I'm like, is it supposed to be this damn strong? But hey, that was just my experience. Other people may say the Impaler is the best weapon if you know how to use it correctly. All I can say is, we'll see. But that's it when it comes to my issues or complaints, and all of these feel like nitpicks more than anything else, so let's wrap things up here. Overall, Doom the Dark Ages really is phenomenal on almost every level. The combat is stupendous, the presentation is top tier, the story's interesting, and it was engaging through and through. It took me around 18 hours to beat this game, and I found a majority of the secrets, but I'm sure if you want 100% it, it's going to take you a little bit longer. If you ignore all the secrets, you could probably finish it in around 13 to 15 hours, but I really would recommend taking your time with this one. It's just so enjoyable. It was one of those games where I didn't didn't want it to end. I was sad when the credits rolled because I was just having such a fun time with it. And the game's also challenging. I was playing on what is essentially the hard difficulty, I think what most people play Doom on, and it kept me on my toes the entire time. And so in conclusion, I absolutely recommend Doom the Dark Ages. I recommend it at full price. I recommend checking it out on Game Pass. Find any way you can to play this game. It is one of those games that I would have no problem genuinely giving a 10 out of 10 to. And if you're not aware, a 10 out of 10 to me means that it just gets my highest recommendation. Not that it's a perfect video game, because like I've already said, that doesn't exist. At the end of the day though, go play Doom the Dark Ages. You won't regret it, and that is why I think this game is totally tubular. Okay, now we can actually end the video. So if you made it to this part of the video, please like, share, comment, subscribe. I hope you enjoyed it. I tried to do a bit more of like an analysis of the game than just some really thrown together 10-minute review or first thoughts or anything like that. I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it to this part of the video, yep, we're sticking to the code word spicy nuggets. Thank you so very much. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. Try Doom the Dark Ages. Thanks again to Bethesda. You're awesome. See y'all later. Bye-bye.